Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Headlines Today. I'm Birish Banerjee. Well, more than 1 lakh students appeared all over the country earlier in the day for the CAT exam. And CAT obviously is an application-based exam. But the big question is, apart from the tuition and the tutoring they had for the CAT exam, did the school system that they all passed through, did that actually help them at all? Because India's top private schools may be churning out toppers by the hundreds, but are they really world-class? A major survey says something is seriously wrong with our teaching methods. We'll tell you what this survey says and the impact on the students over the next half an hour in our special Rote is Rot. Alright, now just when you thought that India was emerging as a knowledge superpower, here comes the dampener. An exhaustive survey of school students made available to India Today magazine shows frightening gaps in learning in key subjects. One of the largest of its kind, the survey was conducted jointly by the Ahmedabad-based Educational Initiatives and Wipro Applying Thoughts in Schools, a community initiative of software major Wipro. Here's the full picture.
At a time when students of top private schools are routinely averaging 90% marks in board examinations, this survey is an eye-opener, at least as far as learning is concerned. The findings of the EI Wipro survey is indeed exhaustive. It involved over 32,000 students of class 4, 5 and 8. The survey was spread across 142 English medium schools in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai and Kolkata. The study tested learning and understanding of key concepts in English, maths and science, and the results are truly frightening. Broadly speaking, the survey claims that top schools in India show an alarming gap in student learning. That Indian students fare poorly in comparison to international counterparts. That learning is rote-based and does not focus on real knowledge. Apart from the multiple choice questions devised to test their learning achievements, their writing competence was also put to test. The findings present a dismal picture of student learning in the country's premier schools. The highlights are: students appear to be learning mechanically rather than truly understanding the concepts. They performed exceedingly well where the answers could be mugged up from textbooks, showing an unhealthy bias towards rote learning. Their performance on questions testing comprehension or applications was far below acceptable levels. Students slotted learning into artificial compartments and their ability to apply what they learned to real-life situations was extremely poor. Worryingly, class 4 students in Indian schools performed far below average in mathematics and science when compared to their counterparts in 43 other countries. Among the surprises, Delhi, Mumbai and Kolkata outperformed Bangalore and Chennai. Interestingly, schools affiliated to the ICSE board outperformed the CBSE board, which in turn bettered the state boards, an indication that ICSE was more adaptive to current trends. The biggest surprise was that class size or facilities like computers and libraries made no substantive difference to a school's performance, implying that what matters most is the way children are being taught to learn. With bureau inputs, Rashi Visaria, Headlines Today.
Alright, so that's a brief overview of what this survey contains. Of course, you can catch this survey in the latest issue of India Today magazine. But the survey does bring up some shocking results and some most unexpected results. To discuss this further, I am joined now in the studio by Dr. Vinay Kumar, Principal TPS Vasant Kunj, and also joining us live from Ahmedabad is the man behind the survey, Mr. Sridhar Rajagopalan, the Managing Director of Educational Initiatives. Welcome both of you to the program. Mr. Rajagopalan, if I can begin with you. Now, the findings that this survey has come out with is a very large sample size, 32,000 students across 5 cities. Are you yourself personally shocked by these findings?
We are slightly surprised. We are quite surprised because though we have been working with students and with schools over the last 5 years, we did expect a slightly better performance, and also some of the comparative results were quite surprising. So while it was on lines that were expected, the actual magnitude of the change has come as a surprise even to us.
Dr. Vinay Kumar, you have been associated with education for quite some time. Are you yourself shocked by these results?
Oh yes, it's shocking. kind of survey.
But why didn't you expect this kind of a result?
Now, basically, in India, if you see our school education, it is 100% examination oriented. Here, the kids, they are not learning education. The process of learning is directly attached to how they are going to perform in the examination. So that's why, when you say rote memorization, it is there in Indian system.
We're all concentrating on the marks you eventually get in the examination. We're all concentrating on that numeral that you get at the end of the day after preparing for the exam.
That's right. That's why the problem is there.
Mr. Rajagopal, I'd like to come back to you now. Does this survey imply very specifically that the educational system hasn't understood the meaning of education? Does it refer to education, the way the Indian system has understood education, as merely mugging up, as merely memorizing?
I think, what you've put in very strong terms and principle, I think, is largely true, that there are certain ills that seem to be widespread. For example, learning by rote or focus on memory, having textbooks and questions which are more or less based only on the textbook, having board exams which largely are based on recall, and yet, scores of 96, 98, 99% in the board exams are common. So some of these ills are true across the system. One of the other things that some of our other research has been finding out, for example, is the use of English right from class 1, even in places where the children may not be very familiar with the language. And I'm giving these examples because these cut across schools. And it's not surprising, therefore, that if rote memorization, learning to the exam, as was mentioned earlier in the program, are common across schools, it is not surprising that children are doing that well. We found again and again that children are intelligent, but if in case they are trained to answer exams of a particular type, which is there both in the exams and in the school tests, it is likely that they respond by memorizing and responding to questions in a very typical fashion, which is what the survey is showing.
So there is a set categorization that the students are being forced into, and that's how they are mugging up things, and that's how they're attempting examination. We'll come back to you, Mr. Rajagopalan, for more on that. But one highlight of this EI Wipro India Today survey says the students fare well in rote questions, but trip up on those needing interpretation and analysis. And these examples from the survey on maths prove that very point.
The question posed was, what is the length of the pencil in the picture? And the four choices are 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters and 7 centimeters. While only 11% got the answer right, an overwhelming 87% of the students got it wrong. The finding says that class 4 students know that readings have to be taken from the right side of the scale, but not when the left end is not at 0. That this is not just an oversight is evident because the error is repeated in similar questions. Similarly, here one is required to identify the correct arrangement. Of the choices given, B is the correct option, and a majority of 64% got that right. The finding says class 6 students fared relatively well in a question needing visualization, even though this is not formally taught in schools. Unconventional for a maths question, but this one asked, what is the likely weight of a regular teaspoon? The multiple choices are 25 milligram, 75 milligram, 20 gram and 100 gram. While 39% got it right, the majority had a vague idea about this. The finding says class 8 students show poor weights and measures competency, which is so important in real life, something they would learn better if there was more emphasis on practical applications. Another question on visual maths asked, what fraction does the shaded part represent? The multiple choices were 1/4, 1 by 16, 4 by 13 and 4 by 12. While 37% got this right, the majority again faltered. The finding says class 4 students fare better if the question is more direct, that is, if 1 out of 4 squares was shaded instead of 4 of the 16 squares. This also shows an inability to handle unfamiliar questions.
And what's also interesting about this particular maths survey that we just showed you is that generally we pride our Indian students on being better off at maths, but this survey also showed when comparing class 4 students, Indian students of private schools, with compatriots in 43 other countries, Indian students fared more poorly than their counterparts in 43 countries as far as maths was concerned. Dr. Kumar, does that come as slightly shocking? Because we are very proud of our maths foundation and maths basics, but we did far worse.
But still I feel that we are better than many other countries.
As far as maths is concerned.
Right. To be honest, when I have gone through the samples of questions which you have shown, it depends on what kind of questions you are asking to what kind of students. Whether students are familiar with those kind of questions or not. To be honest, in CBSE, especially I am talking about, most of our teaching system, it is knowledge based. When it comes to understanding
but
and
Dr.
skill.
Kumar, these very questions were posed to students from 43 other countries, same level. They fared better than us. So are they learning something better than us, or are they learning something far worse than us?
Basically, it could be compatibility of curriculum. If you prepare our kids, you give them a curriculum, and then you evaluate the performance. I'm sure they are going to perform very well.
Right.
All of a sudden, if you give them a paper which is not compatible with their curriculum, obviously.
So maybe there's something wrong with the curriculum, but we'll discuss that in just a bit. We'll go in for a short break now. Has the rot set in, and who is to blame? Is it the education system, is it the teaching methods, or the examination system itself? That's what we're trying to find out, and this is all based on the survey conducted by EI, Wipro and India Today, which you can obviously catch in the latest edition of India Today. Before the break, we spoke about certain questions that were posed to students, 32,000 students across 5 cities in the country, and how they responded to maths questions. Now let's just sample some science questions in this survey.
One question in science was, what is the chemical formula of steam? The 4 choices are A, CO, B, H2O, C, O2, and D, pure steam does not have a chemical formula. Only 37% got this right. The finding says, Class 8 students fail to make a 2-step reasoning, that water is H2O and it evaporates to form steam. Fill in the blanks. The Earth's rotation on its axis is the reason for A, the different seasons, B, longer days in summer, C, eclipses, and D, day and night. A majority, 66%, got this right. The finding says, Class 4 students fare well in the typically textbookish question, showing ease in handling rote problems. This is seen in other such questions as well, across all grades and in all cities. Here's another one. A fish breathes through its gills, whereas whales breathe through their A, lungs, B, air holes, C, skin, and D, mouth. Only 36% got this right. The finding says, even though Class 6 students know that whales are mammals and that mammals breathe through their lungs, the majority do not make the connection. Another question had this case study. Srihari has a torch with him and 2 new batteries. However, the torch requires 3 batteries to work. Is there any way he can make the torch glow? A, by placing a nail lightly in between. B, by placing nothing in between, just 2 batteries. C, by placing a piece of cloth tightly in between. And D, none of these will work. 52% were right on this. The finding says, Class 8 students know that nails conduct electricity, but fail to apply that knowledge here.
Alright, they are failing to make the connection, the knowledge that they have learned, but they are failing to apply it. That essentially seems to be the entire essence of this survey. We have with us Mr. Sridhar Rajagopalan, who is joining us from Ahmedabad, the Managing Director of Educational Initiatives. Of course, one of the persons involved with this survey. Mr. Rajagopalan, some very interesting results coming out there. Basic point that this survey tries to make is that the knowledge is there, but the application is missing. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Basically, children are learning mechanically, where they have to recall, where they have to apply a procedure that has been taught, they're able to apply the procedure. But where they have to apply the learning, where they have to think for themselves, which is extremely important today, they are failing. They're failing in many practical competencies which they should be able to do. And the international survey, for example, talks about a comparison with a number of other countries. If we were doing poorly compared to 1 or 2 countries or 5 countries, we could say that it is a problem that is specific to those countries. But when we have an average across countries, that's probably the worrying part, which is a kind of wake-up call. I don't think it's anyone to blame. I don't think one of the factors is responsible. Right. But it's a kind of wake-up call to everyone that we need to relook at what we are considering education and how we can address and correct this problem.
But Mr. Rajagopalan, on that very point, when I posed a question to Dr. Vinay Kumar, who's principal Delhi Public School, Vasant Kunj, who is with us in the studio, he himself said a short while back, he said that, well, that depends. When you're comparing it with students from other countries, you are comparing different curriculums, you are comparing different systems. So would this imply that the education system in India, the kinds of patterns under which students are studying, they are mainly knowledge based and not application based, and these 43 countries you're talking about, the curriculum there is mainly application based and very practical?
Well, 2 points. I mean, I don't think, first, since we are considering 43 countries, it's not a very small number. Like I said, that we could have said that a few countries are doing better. If in case 43 countries on an average are performing better, it is a cause for worry, because whatever the reason, it's possible that our curriculum is much less application based than a large number of countries across the world, and that is a cause for worry. It means that we have to make that change quickly. And the second point is that the point of application is something that children have to be able to learn in the world of tomorrow. So that is the reason why the international curriculum, of course this is one particular survey and one needs to verify and do more of these, but we found, in fact, in the questions that we were comparing the international and the national performance, we found that the pattern was repeated across every single question where the children had performed lower. And considering that these are children of schools that are perceived as top schools, it's a matter of concern.
Right, Mr. Rajagopalan, we'll come back to you on that and we'll continue the discussion. We'll go in for a short break now. Are our examination systems merely a test of memory of the students, or are they actually a test of education, knowledge and application? That's what we're discussing based on a survey conducted by Education India, Wipro and India Today. Of course, you can catch this survey in the latest edition of India Today. Before the break, we spoke about the maths and science sample question that were posed to 32,000 students across 5 cities in the country. Now let's just take a look at some of the questions in the English section of this survey.
The question posed was on grammar. The respondents were required to choose the sentence with no mistake. There were 4 options and an overwhelming 80% got this right. The finding says grammar tends to be emphasized a lot in our system. One reason why 80% students of class 4 got this right. Another question was to test the reading comprehension abilities of the respondent. The respondents were given the following passage. Tutankhamun's tomb was forgotten until Howard Carteret discovered it in 1922. The treasures in his tomb made Tutankhamun perhaps the best known of the pharaohs. The question posed was, why, according to the passage, is Pharaoh Tutankhamun famous? The choices are A. Because he died under tragic circumstances. B. Because his tomb had many valuables. C. Because the walls of his tomb were thick. And D. Because the tomb was discovered in 1922. Only 45% got this right. The finding says none of the phrases in the question appear as they do in the passage, enough to confuse class 6 students.
Application, observation, they both seem to be the problem areas for students that we are speaking about. Dr. Kumar, in your vast experience as an educationist, and you've been involved with students across all kinds of classes, senior classes, junior classes, do you think it's about time we brought about and had a relook at the education system, the examination system, the kind of board that we have, the kind of education we're imparting? Should it become more application-based, more observation-based?
I agree with you. You know, if it is more understanding based, more application based, it will be much better.
Let's take Mr. Rajagopalan on that. Mr. Rajagopalan, Dr. Kumar himself offers the suggestion, and he also agrees that there is a need to change the education system, make it more application based, make it more practically oriented. How can that be done? If we want to do that, how can that be done? And what is the whole logistical exercise that you feel is required to bring about such a change?
Okay. There are two ways that one could, or two aspects that one could look at. One, of course, is the exam system itself, where you have a board exam which is entirely rote based and where the marks are given very liberally. And these are two things that, if we look in the last 15-20 years, it has been a trend where it has become more this way, and we believe that that has led to falling standards. So it is possible to, for example, instead of giving only marks and giving high marks, to move to a system of percentiles, where the children's actual learning and actual how they are doing in comparison to others is brought out. So that is one kind of change, and the changes at the board exam level which is being talked about and which needs to be done urgently and is possible to do. The second kind of thing relates to our ways of teaching and learning in the classroom itself, which today predominantly tends to be one of rote, and our textbooks, though there are changes happening, we see some positive changes happening at the NCERT level in the textbooks, but largely, especially at the state board level, the curriculum is extremely rote-based. People consider that if there is more material in the textbook, it's a better thing, and not really what children are learning.
So we get your point. Change the education system, change the examination system, make it more application-based so the students can actually gain something from it, and also probably a change required in the teaching methodology at the school level. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Rajagopalan. Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for joining us and sharing your views with us. That's it in this special presentation. Of course, a change is required, and certain initiatives are being taken across certain boards. One of the prime boards that comes to mind when we're talking about these changes is, of course, the CBSE. But that's it for this special presentation. We'll take a break now, but the news and updates continue on Headlines Today.